Hi there. Welcome to Reddit Confessions. If you're here for a story that starts with romance and ends with regret, you're in the right place. Because this isn't a fairy tale. It's a slow-motion train wreck narrated by the guy still trapped in the last car, staring out the window, wondering when the ride got hijacked. Let me drop you into the moment. No fluff, no flashbacks, no how we met nonsense. Just this. She poured herself a glass of wine she didn't offer me, sat down across from me in silence, and picked at the dinner I made. Then, somewhere between her second bite of rosemary chicken and her fifth disinterested glance at her phone, she looked up and said it. You were my biggest mistake in my youth. No emotion, no build-up, just that. I think I blinked twice before I even registered it. My ears didn't want to believe it. My heart did, but it had already heard worse, just in quieter words. So I said the only thing I could say while holding on to the last thread of whatever dignity I had left. Then I'll fix that now. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't finish my plate. I didn't ask what she meant. I just stood up, walked upstairs, grabbed a bag, and left our house without even bothering to shut the front door fully behind me. Let the wind figure it out. There's no need to name her yet. She knows who she is. And if she's watching this, yes, Marin, this is about you. 3 days ago, you decided I was your biggest mistake, and I decided not to stick around to be your ongoing regret. But what neither of us expected was how fast the universe would answer back. Because in less than 72 hours, I would hold in my hands the one thing that made her beg, cry, and practically collapse. And no, it wasn't revenge. It was something way colder. And it started the moment I checked the voicemail I wasn't supposed to hear. I didn't even remember throwing my phone in the glove compartment when I left. I guess somewhere between her words and my silent exit, my body went on autopilot. I didn't want to see her name light up the screen. I didn't want to read her cold little justifications, like, it's not what I meant, or, you know I didn't say that to hurt you. Those words are just stitches you slap on a wound you personally sliced open. So the phone stayed buried in that glove box for a full day while I roamed aimlessly, walking through unfamiliar streets, buying gas station coffee, just to feel like I had a purpose, and checking into the cheapest, dustiest motel that didn't charge by the hour. I laid on a mattress that felt like a slice of toast and stared at a ceiling fan that creaked louder than my thoughts. That second night, while sitting in my car behind the motel, too anxious to sleep and too numb to cry, I decided to check my phone, just to see what damage had been done. 12 missed calls, 5 texts, 1 voicemail, all from her. I didn't open the messages. I tapped on the voicemail. I don't even know why. Curiosity? Masochism? It started with static, then her voice. But she wasn't talking to me. She didn't know she had dialed me. She was talking to someone else. A man. I could hear him laugh faintly in the background. And then I heard her laugh. One I hadn't heard in years. The kind of laugh that doesn't belong to someone who just watched their marriage collapse less than 24 hours ago. He finally left, she said with a smug chuckle. Didn't even put up a fight. I didn't even have to say the rest. Then silence. Her footsteps. And then, this part still rings in my ears. God, it feels good. Like, I can finally breathe again. I thought he'd drag it out. But nope. Benton the doormat strikes again. There was more. I don't remember all of it. I wish I didn't remember any of it. I ended the voicemail and just sat there, staring at the dashboard like it could rewind time. The worst part wasn't even what she said. It was the way she said it. Like I was this embarrassing cardigan she finally donated. Like I was some weak, outdated mistake she didn't want to be seen with anymore. And I realized something in that moment I never wanted to admit. She never wanted a husband. She wanted an audience. And I've been clapping for her performance for 14 years while she slowly wrote me out of the script. But here's the twist, Marin, if you're still listening. You didn't expect what I found next. Because while you were playing the lead in your little drama, someone else, someone unexpected, was watching from the wings. And they were the one who sent me the photo. The photo that changed everything. I sat there in the car for a long time after that voicemail ended. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the steering wheel like some dramatic movie husband. No, I just sat in silence. Because something about that recording hollowed me out. Her voice, so casual, so relieved, was the final confirmation of what I'd feared for months but hadn't dared to say out loud. She hadn't just fallen out of love with me. She'd been mocking me from the shadows of her new life. I told myself not to call her, not to text, not to give her the satisfaction of knowing I heard it. But I was still weak, still chewing on every toxic word like it might turn into a reason if I just analyzed it enough. And that's when the second bomb hit. It came from a person I never expected, her sister, Trina. Now, Trina and Marin weren't exactly close. They didn't fight, but they didn't bond either. Marin always thought Trina was too dramatic, and Trina always rolled her eyes at how Marin treated me. I guess I assumed Trina only tolerated me because she had to, but I was wrong. At exactly 1:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Trina. No words, just an image. A photo. I hesitated before opening it, already bracing for something I couldn't unsee. And I was right to brace. It was a shot taken from across a parking lot, clearly from inside a car. But even in the poor lighting, there was no mistaking what I was looking at. Marin, outside a restaurant, leaning against someone else's car, laughing, touching a man's chest, way too familiar for comfort. Her hand was on his tie. His hand was on her waist. And neither of them looked like it was their first time being that close. The timestamp? 2 weeks ago. A night she said she was working late, stuck in back-to-back budget meetings. It wasn't rage that hit me first. It was something worse, confirmation. The voicemail wasn't just words. It was a live feed into a world I wasn't welcome in anymore. And that photo was the entrance pass she handed someone else while I was home folding her laundry and reheating leftovers. I stared at the picture so long my screen dimmed. Then I stared longer. Eventually, Trina sent another message. I wasn't going to say anything. But after what she said at dinner, "You deserve to know?" I didn't reply. I couldn't. There were too many emotions crashing into each other in my chest, like bumper cars with no rules. And yet, somehow, there was still more. Because the man in the photo? He wasn't a stranger. I knew that jacket. I knew the crooked grin. And I definitely knew the car. It was someone I'd once helped move apartments in the Ring. Someone I trusted enough to let into my home, into my fridge, into our life. And now he was somewhere else entirely. But I'll save that revelation for what happened next. Because trust me, Reddit, this wasn't just a betrayal. This was a carefully laid trap I walked into, blindfolded and smiling. And I hadn't even triggered the biggest part yet. You ever have that gut-dropping realization where every memory suddenly starts replaying in reverse, and none of it looks the same anymore? That's exactly what happened the moment I recognized him in the photo. No, it wasn't some random guy she met on a dating app. No shady coworker. No long-lost ex. It was Callan. Callan Wade. My so-called best friend since high school. I helped him get a job when he was broke. Let him crash on our couch for 3 weeks after his lease fell through. I gave that man a key to our house once so he could feed our dog while we were out of town. Hell, he used to drink beer on my back porch and joke that if he ever met a woman like Marin, he'd retire from bachelorhood immediately. Turns out, he didn't have to find a woman like Marin. He just waited until I wasn't enough for her anymore. That night in the motel, I barely slept. I just kept going over every moment I could remember. Every cookout, every poker night, every time I saw him look at her and brushed it off. I used to laugh when she'd say Callan had that flirty energy, and I'd defend him. That's just how he is. He flirts with everybody. Yeah, everybody except me, apparently. And then came the knock. It was just after noon the next day. I thought maybe the front desk wanted me to check out early. Instead, it was Trina. I opened the door in yesterday's shirt, looking like hell, and she stepped in without waiting for an invitation. She was holding her phone and a half-empty iced coffee, and she looked mad. Not fake angry. Protective angry. "Don't go back there," she said before I even asked what she was doing. "Not yet. You need to see this first." She sat on the corner of the bed like she'd done this before, opened her phone, and played me a voice memo. It was Marin. Again. This one wasn't accidental. Apparently, Marin had sent it to Trina the day before she dropped that bomb on me at dinner. She was ranting. Ranting about me. About how numb she felt every time she saw me walk through the door. About how I sucked the life out of the room with my sad sack loyalty, and how she was meant for more. Then came the words that still punch me in the ribs when I remember them. I swear, if he'd just grow a spine and leave, I'd finally be free. But he won't. He's too comfortable. Too scared. I wasn't even angry at that point. I was just hollow. That was the moment I realized. She didn't want a divorce. She wanted me to end it so she could walk away clean. So she could tell people I gave up or walked away from the marriage while she stood there, halo intact. She wanted me to be the bad guy, and for the first time in years, I considered giving her exactly what she wanted. But before I could even decide what to do next, Trina dropped one last truth bomb. "Benton," she said, looking me straight in the eye. "Callan's not just seeing her. He's moving in. I saw boxes. His stuff is already there. She was waiting for you to clear out. That dinner was her cue." And just like that, the betrayal grew teeth. It wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just romantic. It was premeditated. But you want to know the real twist? This story doesn't end with me getting revenge. It starts with someone else doing it for me. Because while Marin and Callan were setting up their little fresh start fantasy, they forgot one thing. The house. The one I walked out of. It was mine. And I still had the deed. People love to say, it's just a house. But when you've scrubbed the floors with your own hands, installed every shelf, fixed every leak, and paid every damn bill for 14 years, it's not just wood and brick. It's a piece of your soul. And for me, it was also a legally binding piece of property with one name on the deed. Mine. Marin always hated paperwork. When we bought the place, I handled it all. I signed everything. She said she didn't care whose name went where as long as we had somewhere cozy to call home. Cozy, huh? Turns out, she meant cozy enough to cheat in while assuming I'd roll over and disappear. So after Trina told me Callan was already moving in, I went quiet. I didn't lash out. I didn't rage text or leave threatening voicemails. That's what they expected. Instead, I asked Trina a single favor: drive me back. Not to talk, not to scream, just to observe. We pulled up a block from the house around 6:30 p.m. I sat low in the passenger seat while Trina angled the car just enough to give me a clear view. Callan's rust-red Ford was parked in the driveway. That alone made me physically sick. I couldn't even look at the hood without remembering the time I helped him fix his radiator after work while Marin brought us lemonade. That was 2 years ago. Turns out I was hydrating the guy who'd one day sleep in my bed. Then I saw her. Marin walked out of the front door with a wide smile on her face. She was barefoot, holding a throw pillow, and laughing like she was already living in a rom-com. Callan came out behind her, carrying a box with what looked like bathroom stuff: shampoo, electric toothbrush, cologne. She reached over, grabbed his arm, and pulled him in for a kiss. On my porch, under my roof. In that moment, everything inside me boiled, but I stayed still. See, the power in that situation was starting to shift. She didn't know I knew. She didn't know Trina had sent me the photo. She didn't know I'd heard her gloating voicemail, or that I'd listened to her emotionally strip me down behind my back. But most importantly, she didn't know the next morning was the first of the month, and that meant the mortgage would auto-draft from my account, which I had just closed. I let them have that evening. Let them dance around the kitchen. Let them toast to their new life. Because the next day, the real celebration was mine. I got up early, earlier than I had in weeks. Went to the courthouse with the original property deed, canceled the utilities, and submitted an emergency occupancy dispute. I didn't need a lawyer to prove I was the sole owner. My name was the name. The house wasn't marital property. It was mine before we got married. Paid in full with money I inherited after my dad passed. By 10:30 a.m., I had an order in hand. By noon, the locks had been changed. And by 12:45, Marin called me 22 times in a row. I didn't answer. I drove back to the house with the paperwork in my glove box and a locksmith's receipt in my pocket. I parked right in front of the mailbox like I used to. I walked up to the porch like I owned it, because I did. And I rang the doorbell just once. The look on her face when she opened that door? I wish I could bottle it. Confusion turned to disbelief. Disbelief turned to panic. And Callan? He stood behind her in a towel like the clueless extra in a bad sitcom pilot. She opened her mouth to say something, probably to spin it, or soften it, or pretend none of it was her fault, but I cut her off with 6 words. "Hi, you're both trespassing. Kindly leave." And as I watched her eyes fill with the dawning realization that this wasn't a joke, that the man she called her biggest mistake had just pulled the floor out from under her, I felt something unexpected. Peace. But don't get too comfortable, Reddit. Because what happened next wasn't peace. It was something darker. Because 3 hours later, she started begging. And then it got messy. They didn't leave right away. Of course they didn't. Marin stood there on the porch like she couldn't wrap her brain around what was happening, her eyes darting from my face to the locksmith sticker on the new deadbolt. Then back to the stack of court paperwork I calmly held up for her to read. Callan just stood behind her with his hands on his hips, like he was still waiting for a director to yell cut. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. And for once, I didn't apologize. Marin finally stammered. Wait, what is this? Are you serious? You can't just kick us out. I could, and I did. Politely. Legally. Quietly. I told her she had 30 minutes to remove anything that was hers, and hers alone. I wasn't being petty. I wasn't going to throw her stuff on the lawn like some dramatic revenge fantasy. I just wanted my house cleared of the people who used it as a stage for betrayal. She begged. First came the frantic voice. Benton, please, don't do this. Can we just talk? This is crazy. Then came the guilt trip voice. You're overreacting. It didn't even start until after you left. Then came the tears. Fake or not, they came fast. And maybe that's what stunned me the most. I always thought Marin was incapable of crying over me. I'd seen her cry during movies, when a pet passed away, even once over a coffee machine that broke right before a big work presentation. But never over me. And now? She was holding onto the porch railing, trying not to collapse, sobbing like I was the one who had wrecked her world. She asked if we could go for a walk. Said she had a lot to say. Said she was confused and hadn't meant everything the way it came out. She wanted time. She wanted to explain. She wanted to start again, from honesty. I looked at Callan then, still shirtless, his arms crossed like he was trying to stare me down. I think part of him still thought I'd be too soft to follow through. That I'd break, like always. But the thing is, heartbreak changes you. It doesn't make you stronger, it makes you clearer. I told her that a walk wouldn't fix anything. That there was no we to talk about. And then I said something that silenced both of them. You said I was your biggest mistake, Marin. All I did today was agree with you. That shut her up. She didn't speak again until she came back half an hour later with 2 suitcases and an old gym bag. She walked right past me, didn't even look me in the eye. Callan followed her like a kid being sent home early from summer camp. She didn't say goodbye. He didn't say anything at all. The door clicked shut behind them, and for the first time in what felt like years, I was alone in my own home, with silence that didn't feel like punishment. But the peace didn't last long, because that night, around 11:15, my phone lit up. A text from Marin. Just one line. I made a mistake. Please talk to me. And then another. He's not who I thought he was. And then, voicemail. This time, I didn't listen right away, because the next morning, Trina called with one last revelation. Something she didn't want to tell me before, because she thought it would break me completely. But what she told me, it didn't break me. It changed everything. Because the biggest betrayal hadn't even happened yet. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of anger. Not even because of heartbreak. It was something worse, anticipation. I lay on the mattress I'd once shared with the woman who had just sobbed on my porch hours earlier, wondering what more there could possibly be left to break. I mean, how many ways can one person shatter another before there's nothing left to destroy? Turns out, I hadn't even reached the center of the wreckage yet. At 8:02 a.m., Trina called. She didn't start with, hey, or are you okay? She just said, you need to hear this. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I stepped outside to answer it, pacing along the walkway I built with my bare hands 5 summers ago. She took a deep breath and told me that something had been bothering her ever since she saw Callan's car in the driveway. Something that didn't sit right. Something she hadn't even wanted to admit to herself. 6 months ago, Marin had told her she was helping a friend find a job. She said she was using her company's referral system to get someone an interview for a position on her floor. That someone, Callan, I never knew. She never mentioned it. Trina only remembered because Marin had asked her to keep it between sisters. That was 3 months before the photo. 4 months before the voicemail. 5 months before she told me I was her biggest mistake. And back then, I had no idea Callan was even looking for a new job. Trina said she brushed it off at first, but yesterday, after watching how Marin reacted when I kicked them out, it all clicked. She hadn't just fallen for Callan recently. She'd been planning this. For months. Helping him get a job, slipping his name past HR, coaching him through the interviews. All while he was sleeping with me and laughing behind my back. They had built this fantasy future in secret, using my trust as the scaffolding. And worst of all, Marin had leveraged me, the man she claimed to be numb around, to make it happen. She lied to her boss and told them Callan was my cousin. She used my name as a character reference on paperwork I never saw. I had unknowingly helped launch the man who would steal my wife, using my identity, my loyalty, my silence. That wasn't just betrayal. That was identity theft of the soul. I hung up with Trina and walked back inside the house, numb. The light through the window hit the picture frame in the hallway. A photo of me and Marin on our 5th anniversary. She had her head on my shoulder. I remember that night vividly. She'd whispered, "I'd never want to go through life without you." I had believed her. I'd built every decision around her. Every missed promotion. Every declined offer. Every friend I let go of because she didn't like how they talked about marriage. I trimmed down my life to fit into her idea of what a good husband should look like. And now I wasn't even a footnote in her rewritten history. But here's where the story turns. Because this time, I didn't crumble. I didn't answer her texts. I didn't listen to the voicemail that waited in my inbox. I waited. Not to punish her. Not to win. But to watch. And by the end of that day, the unraveling began. One of Marin's co-workers, someone I didn't even know, emailed me at my old personal address. The subject line read, "You deserve to know." Attached, screenshots, dozens of them, conversations, emails, call logs, calendar invites. It was Marin and Callan's entire secret timeline, laid bare. Every detail, every lie, every plan, dates matching mine. Weekends where she said she was visiting her mom were actually Airbnb bookings 2 towns over. Restaurant receipts, hotel confirmations, a folder marked June future. Inside that folder, apartment listings. She wasn't planning to fix our marriage. She was planning to replace it. And if that wasn't enough, there was one final file. An engagement ring catalog. Screenshotted. Circled in red. That night I left the house, she wasn't just relieved. She was preparing. But all of it collapsed the moment I stayed silent. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply walked. And now, she was the one sitting in a guest room at her mother's house, sending messages that went unanswered. But this isn't a revenge story. It's a story about a man who lost everything and then discovered the most powerful thing in the world. Indifference. A week passed. No screaming matches. No courtroom drama. Just silence. It's strange how quickly things fall apart when you stop holding them together. For years, I thought my quiet loyalty was what kept our marriage afloat. Turns out, it was more like duct tape holding a collapsing dam. And once I stepped away, once I stopped patching every leak, her entire carefully constructed fantasy crumbled under its own weight. Marin kept texting for 3 days after I kicked them out. The messages started long and tearful, then turned apologetic, then desperate. Then came the silence. I think that was her way of waiting for me to come around, like I always did. But this time, I didn't. The last message I got from her said simply, "I messed up. You didn't deserve that." And for once, I agreed. But here's the twist no one ever expects from stories like this. I'm grateful it happened. Because after the dust settled, after the adrenaline faded and the noise quieted, I was left with something I hadn't felt in years myself. I fixed the house. Cleaned it top to bottom, took down all the pictures, donated the throw pillows she insisted on buying that I always secretly hated. I replaced them with simple things that actually felt like me. I even repainted the kitchen cabinets the color I wanted them to be 5 years ago, forest green instead of her sterile gray. I went fishing with my cousin for the first time in forever. I got lunch with a friend Marin had once called a bad influence. I started sleeping again, really sleeping. And I finally played that old guitar collecting dust in the corner of my living room. The strings were stiff, the sound was rusty, but it felt good. Honest. As for Callan, from what Trina told me, his job didn't last long. Something about inappropriate conduct and a sudden HR investigation. Poetic, isn't it, Marin? She moved back in with her mom. No apartment. No fresh start. No ring. Sometimes, the life you try to build on someone else's back just collapses under your own weight. But me? I'm not broken. I'm rebuilding. Slower, smaller, but sturdier. And if you're watching this, wondering whether you'll ever feel normal again after betrayal, you will. Not all at once, but in small, stubborn pieces. You'll find yourself in the quiet moments you used to dread. And one day, like me, you'll look in the mirror, not as someone abandoned, but as someone free. Thanks for sticking with me through this whole story. If you've ever experienced something even remotely similar, Or if you've ever had a moment where walking away was the hardest but best thing you ever did, drop your story in the comments. I'll be reading every one. And don't forget, you're watching Reddit Confessions, where real stories find real voices. Until next time, take care of yourself. And if someone ever tells you that you were their biggest mistake, let them go. Because some mistakes fix themselves.